Welcome to I Wonder Doctor, back on our old set and on our new format. Today we want to talk about why, when people get into problems where they do things like I say I'll take care of myself, and then I don't.
And oh my, this is where the rubber hits the road in menopause medicine. And every medicine, excuse me, because we're on I Wonder Doctor. Because when it comes down to it and someone's not feeling well and they show up in a doctor's office, what really matters is what are they going to do to get better? And that's any investigation, any kind of tests you do, any kind of suggestions you make, it comes down to what is that patient going to do to get better? And you know, from someone who really understands how to help heal, that list can be very long. And when I first started off in medicine, one of the things that I did is I made long lists. And I saw over a short period of time that I just overwhelmed my patients. Here's 50 things that you can do to get better that relate to nutrition and detoxification and exercise and stress.
Here's an experience I have a lot. I'll read something, or I'll learn something from you, or I'll decide that I really want to make a change. And for a moment in time, I'm really excited to do it. It feels legit. It feels like I can change. I can do whatever it is I want. And then over time, it dissipates. New Year's resolutions are the prime example of this one, right? We say, man, I'm really going to start exercising. And we want to, and we really mean it. But then a week goes by, and work challenges whack us again, or whatever it is, or I'll speak for myself, and then I just sort of drift away from whatever initial spark of desire it was to change.
Yes, the most common challenge in getting well, and
Yeah.
doing anything really. And getting well, I think, has become a side sport for people.
Yeah.
And and then there's other folks that they are not well and it's serious. And for those folks, it becomes the main thing on their mind every day. And their whole life is organized around, can I heal? So you're going to have a little more trouble if it's just something you think you're adding to your already busy ritual. Whereas someone who healing is a serious thing for them, they know that their time is up and they had better do a lot of good things. They tend to not drop those things off. Now, a trick that I think is useful for anyone is don't overwhelm yourself with the choices that you're going to give yourself that you're supposed to do. So I always suggest that together, myself as a doctor and a patient, we take a look at the list of things that could make a difference for that person. And I'm waiting to see where they light up, where a little light bulb goes off in them where they say, they have interest in that.
Right, you're going over the litany of possibilities of things as a doctor you know they could change or would benefit from changing. And you're waiting for that one to go, oh yeah, that's the one, doc.
I see it. I see it.
Yeah.
And I don't care which one that is.
Yeah.
They're going to be drawing from a tool bag. Because no matter what diagnosis you have, how do you heal? Well, you're going to have to make adjustments in what you're eating, what supplements you're taking, your exercise, oh yeah, huge. Some people are doing too much. Most people are doing too little.
Yeah.
And then some people have detoxification projects to do. Some have minor projects, some have more major one, and then the elephant in most people's room is how they react unfavorably to the stresses of day-to-day life, of which I hear, rumor has it, there are a few.
I think so.
I know it very well.
Yeah.
And because, just to linger on that one for a while, if you react in an excessive way or an exaggerated way to the stresses in your life, it depletes your hormones, your neurotransmitters, it slows down your metabolism, it wears you out, you get low energy and then low mood, and it's just a downward spiral. So I always like to emphasize that one. And again, back to, well, what do you do? So I go through the list, and I see perhaps for this patient that they have diabetes, for example, and they're eating a lot of simple carbohydrates, a lot of sweets. Well, I used to say, now eliminate all sweets. Yeah, right. People are eating those sweets for a reason. They're not feeling well, and if they eat the sweets, they get a momentary mood alteration to feel a little better and get a little more energy. So sometimes I never ask people to eliminate all sweets. I want to get to the bottom of why they're eating sweets. And if you don't get to the bottom of why they're eating sweets, they have to do it by discipline. And the discipline lasts a little while, like you were saying when we opened. Yeah, for a week. They've eliminated all sweets, and then it starts creeping back. So I'm going to pause a little bit on you have to go for the cause. But I'm going to go back to, I would never say eliminate all sweets. I take a look at the sweets that they're eating, and in my practice, we have people do a very thorough 3-day diet diary.
Yeah.
And I always say, don't give me your best days. Give me your usual days, and write everything down that you eat. And then you see it. And you see a Coca-Cola in the morning and another carbonated sweet beverage at noon and 3, and then you add them up at the end of the day, and their average is they're doing 6 of those carbonated sweetened beverages a day.
Yeah.
Of course, I wouldn't want to mention any brand names. And do I say eliminate all of those? No. I'm looking for, is there some goal that they could have that I think they could actually do, and it wouldn't be too hard? I'll go, this first week, what I'd like you to do is go from 6 to 5. Because we're going for the long haul. I know you can pull off a week, so don't tell me you're going to go from 6 to 0. I know you could pull that off for a week.
Yeah.
I want to do something that you can actually sustain over time. So your goal for this next week is go from 6 to 5. And that's just an example.
Right.
Of the many examples that I could give. And I'll see it in their face. They'll go, they get it. I can do that. That's not too hard. And that's how we proceed. Because if they succeed at that first week, they're far more likely to go to the next week with the next job that they have to do.
Sodas are an interesting one, just as a somewhat side. I left living with you when I was 18, and I got a job delivering pizzas. And one of the perks of pizzas was free sodas. And I was 18, and it was great. And I was drinking them like no tomorrow. And I grew up with a health food background, and I knew this wasn't a sustainable lifestyle, and I knew I was sowing my oats by drinking sodas. But I quickly went, all right, I want to cut these out. And sodas, for me, turned out to be easy, because when I measured my pleasurometer of sugars, not everyone, but me, I didn't actually get that much pleasure from sodas. I was doing it, it was fun, it tasted better than water, but it wasn't like this amazingly fulfilling thing. Now, if I'm honest with me, chocolate does hit a pleasure center. So part of it I get totally is just cut down and hit that point
That's
where I
right.
can actually sustain it. But the other one was, once I realized, hey, I don't actually get that much pleasure out of soda, that was really easy for me to let go of. Where mine would be, all right, Josh, go from 6 candy bars a day, I never did that, to 5. Right?
Yeah. And then that's why I mentioned at the outset there's a reason why someone is eating 3 chocolates a day.
Yeah.
And the reason's pretty obvious. I mean, medically or emotionally, they're experiencing a little bit of a downer. And what works, people don't like downers until they get into the whole subject of downers and get skilled at downers. People don't like a mood drop.
Yeah.
They don't feel right inside. They might have actual emotions like uneasiness or anxiety or depression. These are these vague, and inside every anxiousness and depression, as we've said so many times in I Wonder Doctor, there's some real feelings like fear or sadness or anger or emptiness or loneliness or meaninglessness. This isn't who we are. But these feelings do exist at this time in human history. Human beings have a lot of these. And what happens is you dip down into that zone, and the reflex response is, I got a mood alter. I don't like this. And so this is what makes it tricky to remove all chocolates in the example you gave, just by discipline.
Yeah.
Because you'll do it for 3 weeks, but the original reason why you got into this behavior is the mood alteration. So bottom line, if I'm going to remove someone's pleasure maker or pleasure restorer or decency restorer, I've got to help them deal with what's going to happen when I remove their decency restorer. I mean, the strongest example I've ever had in my whole career was a 28-year-old young woman, seemed fine. She came to me and she was on 7 milligrams of Xanax a day, and you won't know what that is. But for most of you out there in the audience, like a quarter of a Xanax would get you quite sleepy. A half of a milligram of Xanax, you'd really feel that. And 1 milligram would knock most people out.
And 7.
And she was on 7 a day.
Yeah.
And she had tried to get off of them many times. And she was obviously visibly upset in the office visit, as you could imagine, because she knew she had to get off them. She was not feeling good at all on 7 Xanax a day. And I said to her, don't worry about it. We're not going to touch the Xanax until you're ready to diminish the Xanax. And we spent the first period of time giving her skills for what she would encounter when we remove the first Xanax.
And I can only make a guess that touching someone's Xanax would feel like sacred territory, like the body's desire to stay at the dose they're at.
And the consequences of reducing that dose for someone who's been on it for several years are very intense.
Yeah.
I'm giving you an extreme example.
Yeah.
And so we spent a long period of time, a couple of years, just giving her tools to deal with her uncomfortable emotions, giving her the skill set, because it is a skill set. And then the day came, and I waited for her to announce this to me. And she said, I think I'm ready. And we started the gradual reduction process. And I always like to do those gradually.
Yeah.
Most people can pull off the abrupt, total change, but it's too harsh. And especially for Xanax and, even with chocolate, it's too harsh of a total break. Your body has adjusted to the mood aspects and the sugar aspects. And so you want to do anything very gently. Like you mentioned in the beginning, maybe you'd break a piece off of one of the 3 chocolates you were eating a day and do that for a week. You do these things gradually.
Yeah.
And bottom line, this is the major reason why people have trouble sustaining supportive behaviors. Because when they drop the thing that they know would be healthy if they dropped, and that's, of course, alcohol, street drugs, pharmaceutical drugs, overeating, you name things that we can become addicted to, they're unprepared ultimately for what they're going to have to face because they were using all of those things for mood altering. So the moral of the story is, get really skilled at mood altering. We sure go into that in quite some depth in I Wonder Doctor under the anxiety and depression section. We'll talk about it. Of course, we answer your questions here. And today, our phones are down. So ordinarily, we would have started off by saying call in if you have a question. But today, we're going to say Facebook Live is happening. And you can type in a question, and our monitors will flash that question to us.
And here's one. It's actually what triggered this entire conversation. I just want to pause for a moment and say, when I assess all the things we've ever talked about, we've sat in these chairs hundreds of times and talked about hundreds of different things that people can do to get healthier, and not to put any of them down. I loved every one we've ever covered. But for me, I go, man, this is where the rubber hits the road. It's not like we can't go out there and find information. And it's not like we aren't, most of us, already inundated with 1,000 life changes we already know we could make and should make. It's, can we actually do it? Can we actually make a change? But anyhow, why we got on this topic was Ava from Fayetteville, Arkansas wrote us, and this is what she said. She said, I would love a coach at the gym, and I would really love a health coach. I want them because I know myself. I say I will take care of myself, but I don't. I seem to have no self-control. But here's the thing. There is no way I can afford it. I mean, no way. Is there a free program that you know of or one covered by insurance? If no, I seriously doubt it. What can I do? And it's the what can I do?
Let's unpack that a little bit.
Yeah.
I think health coaches are the future of wellness and recovery.
Yeah.
And of course, I Wonder Doctor, we offer the health coaching service. And this is not a new concept. And for example, Alcoholics Anonymous has done so much phenomenal work on this planet. And every single new alcoholic to the group is assigned a sponsor. And you'd probably get tears out of a very high percentage of Alcoholic Anonymous goers who have been successful when all you have to do is mention their sponsor to them.
When I think of health coaches, well, we've thought about it a lot, so this is a somewhat outdated thought for me, but I originally went, the primary thing that a health coach brings is lots of information on how to eat better.
Yeah.
And
no.
I came to realize, no, they are a person in my life who cares about what I'm going through, and that I hold myself accountable to them for the changes I've said I want to make. And they're there for me to call up and talk to and say, hey, I'm doing it, or I'm not doing it.
Or they'll call you up.
Yeah.
And this is, yes, health coaches earn their living this way.
Yeah.
And yet, why I brought up Alcoholics Anonymous is everyone, as far as I know, my current knowledge about Alcoholics Anonymous is there is no fees, there is no charges. And you could set up, you could ask a friend. In fact, if you were to ask a friend to become your sponsor, undoubtedly, or high likely, your friend would have their own issues and you would become each other's sponsors. A long time, in the 80s, in the world of psychology and emotional healing, there came this whole method called co-counseling. And what co-counselors were is they got together as a group and they paired off in pairs and they counseled each other. Because sometimes just being able to call out the truth of what you really feel and what's really going on in your life to another human being is so healing. They realized, yes, therapists, I've had so much benefit from trained therapists, people who love this work and have devoted their professional lives to it. I would never want to diminish that. But then there is, millions of people who can't afford a therapist. And they can't get at the public therapists. And so co-counseling was born out of this thing. And co-counseling, and one of my best friends did co-counseling for a long time. And so you could create your own health coach with a friend, because what are they doing? It's not rocket science. It's not rocket surgery.
Yeah.
You can identify something that if you did it, your health would improve.
Yeah.
And it comes down to how you're going to improve your nutrition. Maybe you're going to start shopping at farmers markets when you've been shopping for bottles, boxes, and cans and pre-prepared foods. That change alone would make a major difference on anyone's health. Or maybe you just know you've been sitting around too much at work and too much on your couch at home, and you know you got to get moving. These are big things. One of the biggest impacts that can happen for a human being to improve their health is exercise. What kind of exercise? Exotic exercise? No. Walking for example, does so much good for you.
Yeah.
And if that's where you begin, that's where you begin. And if you walk for half a block, because that's what you can do comfortably, that's where you start. And 3 years later, for most people, they're going to be walking a half a mile or 5 miles.
And this ties back to where you began. Pick something realistic, something you
Yes.
go, I can do that, I could stick to that. Not something you go, oh, wait a minute. I'm not going to do that 3 months from now. It's not honest.
That's
it's too
right.
big.
It's too high. It feels too hard. Yeah, and here's another technique.
Yeah.
Pick something that appeals to you and you think you can do, and cut it in half. So if you think, I'm going to walk around the block every day, walk out your front door to the mailbox and back every day for a week.
Yeah.
And succeed at that. Don't experiment with not doing what so many of us do all the time, is we push ourselves a little further than, because our mind tells us we should go there. Should.
I want to circle back one more time to the subject of if we're going to have our friends be our health coaches,
Yes.
because that's what we can afford.
Yeah.
I think the keys to this honestly and actually working, one would be just kindness. We don't
Yeah.
need a bully in our lives. We don't need it in
Yeah.
our own heads, and we don't need to pick the friend who's going to be the bully. We
That's
need the
right.
friend we're going to be accountable to, and then who's going to be kind and who's going to listen. And if we don't make our objective for that week, they're just going to love us. They're not going to
Yeah.
bang us over the head with a
Exactly.
big cudgel. And then the second one is I think we need to define for our health coach friend what we want to do. They're basically there to hear,
You're right.
Jenny or John or
Yeah.
Fred, here's what I want to do by next week. I want to walk to the mailbox every day.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And would you call me every day to encourage me to do that, or to remind me to do that,
Yeah.
or forgive me and help me forgive myself if I didn't do that? You're so right. Yeah, kindness
Yeah.
really works here.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to the element of that creating a group or a comrade or a friend that's going to help you be your health coach.
Yeah.
And then let's say you're starting with, oh my God, I don't have any friends that are going to do this for me. And this is going to be the case for some of you out there. Then that's where you start. And you start with, I'd recommend going through the I Wonder Doctor series and pick up with, you learn to be the friend to yourself. And in that anxiety and depression section, there's actual tools you can do with dealing with the aloneness, the sadness, the fear you have. And how do you befriend yourself? You become, metaphorically, the father or the mother to yourself. And I'm not going to go into the details today on how you do that, but it's in that anxiety and depression section. You start there, because as you learn you're starting from ground zero, you're starting from, how do I befriend myself? And then you become your own co-counselor, and you're starting to get into the bottom of it. Well, this is a big subject. I do think health coaches and friends as health coaches is one of the most phenomenal ways we can actually heal.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like another human being that you're learning to do this with. Or again, if you're the first human being that you've got to learn to be with, it's so rewarding when you go, how can I become a friend of myself? I'm angry at myself all the time. I feel guilt and shame all the time. I mean, well, there's tools to do that, because that's not really who you are. The interesting thing is, this healing journey gets really phenomenal when you get to experience, and this is one of the ultimate goals, the beauty, the sweetness, the individuality of your soul, of your heart, of who you are. So how rewarding can something get when you move from a state of upset and ill health to a state of, I never believed I would come to like and feel love of my own self, or feel love in my own self, because that's ultimately what happens. But perhaps enough of this for today. Wonderful topic, Ava. Go out and do that thing.
Yeah. I think we're done, and we've been on this topic for 25 minutes now,
Yeah.
but I just want to say, as I'm listening to you, I go, this is it, right? I won't, if I'm not finding a way to love myself, be kind to myself, I won't maintain it. And when I think of when I drop off, it's at those moments where I've got something unresolved that I'm not dealing with, and the cure is the sugar, or the cure is something outside myself. So the sustainable change is a long road, but it starts with healing myself.
And okay, I have another thought on this that I think is important.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that initial thing of, I told myself I was going to walk 5 miles every day, and by goodness, the first 3 days I walked 5 miles, and that was the end.
Yeah.
And then something happens, and the thing that happens is you get to feel bad. And then the interesting thing is, if you're paying attention to what's actually going on in your own being, you'll ultimately come to see that producing that feeling of feeling bad, oh boy, look out for this. This is technically complex, is how one of the not purely functional, beneficial ways that we've acquired. So it's no coincidence that you would choose 5 miles a day, and that would be too much, and then you would fail at it. And then you would get the feeling of feeling bad, feeling guilt, or feeling like there's something wrong with what I do, or there's something wrong with me. And all of a sudden, that emerges as the elephant in the room. So your healing program of choosing too much to do and feeling bad wound up in feeling bad. And the thing that you can use that's so important is now you want to deal with exactly what happened there. Rather than stopping at feeling bad, look at that. I feel guilty. Where's my tool bag around guilt and shame? Because that's what appeared. So I respect everything, is what I'm trying to say. And that might be the very barrier that can always stop you. Because let's say you got it down to 0 chocolates a day, but that wasn't serving the thing in you that wanted to heal. The thing in you that wanted to heal was guilt. Unresolved guilt and shame. So yeah, chocolates started you down the road, and then you stopped them, and you could say, well, that was bad. No, I say that was the next step. And then you wound up feeling shame, and it took you into the shame that was part of what you were trying to medicate in the beginning. Getting a little technical there, but this is how life works. So I respect everything. So when a patient comes into my office and they say, I was able to get off the chocolate for 5 weeks, and then I got right back on it, and I just feel terrible. I say, bravo. Let's deal with feeling terrible. Because then you pick up the super skills. How do you feel? How do you heal the part of yourself that judges yourself and judges others and feels bad about yourself and feels bad about others? So all roads, if you're paying attention to yourself and you have the intention of healing yourself, everything that turns up is good. It's things to be worked with. I know I got a little off the rails
a lot
there.
in this one.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
But hey, why not?
Why
Because this is what the nitty-gritty of what we all encounter along the way. So
I think we have time for one more question. The last question we got was from Lara, and Lara wrote, what causes low level of hormones in younger women? Boy, is that a different topic, but a valuable one.
Well, thank you for opening up that Pandora's box. I'm going to give you the short answer today, and maybe next week we could pick up with the long answer.
Okay, great.
The same thing that causes depletion of anything in our body. Here's what it is. We think of young women's hormones, and I'm sure you're referring to ovarian hormones. For example, estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone comes out of the ovary as well,
Yeah.
as does DHEA. We think of them as female-related hormones, and they are.
I don't think of testosterone that way.
Right. Well, it is.
Yeah.
And it's very important. In fact, Testosterone relates to female libido in a big way for a lot of women.
Yeah.
All of them relate to female libido, but testosterone can be the major player there.
Yeah.
It can be the queen. And gosh, female testosterone is so precious and so important. Lifelong. That for another day.
Yeah.
We think of them as relating to sexual function, function of the uterus, menstruation, and yes, they do. But they're powerful, powerful biochemicals. Hormones are some of the most powerful biochemicals floating around in our body. And when someone is stressed and they're not doing a purely functional response to stress, or let's say that that stress is real, let's say that a rattlesnake came into our studio here today.
Yeah.
We would either have to fight that snake or flee. And we are in Florida, and it's not out of the question that a rattlesnake is
No snakes are there, we're good.
Snakes are there, we're good. But we would really mobilize, and we would get strengths that we never even knew we had. I mean, as I've mentioned many times, mothers have been known to lift cars off entrapped children. This is how powerful we can get. Well, it takes some powerful internal chemistry to do that. Mobilizes the heart, mobilizes circulation, mobilizes the muscles to superhuman strength. And most of us know, or many of us know, that the vanguard of the biology of that stress response is adrenaline.
Yeah.
And people may know that cortisol participates in that. And so does insulin and glucose regulating mechanism. And what is not so known is that estrogen, testosterone, and progesterone participate in they can double up. That's not their main function, but they can be recruited to also support the energy needed, the vitality, the mental clarity needed in intense circumstances. And what are a lot of, well, here's a common example. Many young women athletes that are professional athletes or even training very heavily, they stop menstruating. And the reason is their estrogen and their progesterone and their testosterone have been recruited to double up and do the stress response because that's a higher priority. If we're stressed, our beings say this is the highest priority. Don't need to menstruate, don't need to have libido. Let's just shift these hormones over to the stress response. And you know, there's a lot of that going on. So there's a lot of hormonal dysregulation in young women as their precious ovarian hormones are being grabbed by the biological stress response and do that day in and day out. Well, when you're quite young, you can do that. You have the resilience and the reserves. Not always, but most of the time you do.
Yeah.
But do that year in and year out. How many times a day you're going, "Ugh," inside? Maybe you're not showing it, you know?
Right.
tightening up, or whatever it is, or even
Yeah.
dealing with really intense life circumstances and feeling bad about them. Well, you're recruiting your female hormones. And do that for 5 years, 10 years, and you wind up getting depleted female hormones at a young age. In fact, there's an epidemic of depletion of progesterone in young women. And one of the things we teach in the menopause section of I Wonder Doctor, and also in the menopause method, is young women in your early 30s start thinking about progesterone if you're not feeling well, if you're not sleeping as well, if you're not as calm as...
And just to say that again, you said 30s.
I did.
These things
Yeah,
start earlier
they
than
can.
I knew.
And especially in this day and age when there seems to be earlier stresses. And the moral of the story is gather tools at a young age to deal with the stresses of life. You're not hearing me say, well, eliminate all stress. No, stress has got a place in human life. It's a very important place. And where you can improve so much is the tools you bring when you are stressed. And you want to get so good that you're not triggering the biology of the stress response. It's not a rattlesnake. It's thoughts and feelings. That you don't need the extra estrogen to deal with thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And that's how you restore them, too, when you're young, is you get really skilled at your emotions and they can build back up.
The one that I know, I can relate to very clearly is road rage. I'm in a car and I'm having a reaction to the drivers around me. I can ramp myself up really good. absolutely over nothing. There are no physical dangers. They're just driving rudely or too slowly or too quickly. And
Good example.
Yeah.
And subtle examples can take place too. When you really turn the microscope on your own consciousness
Yeah.
and your own emotions, you'll see many triggers going on. Well, hormones are coming out and not going down the menstrual pathway or the libido pathway.
Yeah.
They're going down the stress pathway. And that, Laura, is how young women get into lower levels of hormones. And the short answer to how do you restore them, get really skilled at dealing with your own emotions. You're young, you can heal. That's what I would say for the short answer of how young women deplete and build back their hormones.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, there we go. We've had another episode of I Wonder Doctor. We are back here in not very long, about 20 minutes for our second series. And then, of course, we'll be back 1 p.m. Eastern Standard next week on Thursday as well.
So we begin at 1 o'clock with I Wonder Doctor, the medical questions, and at 2 o'clock we have a segment I Wonder Doctor really addressing the stress we were talking about in the emotions, the mind, and your life. So 2 o'clock every Thursday afternoon. We'll see you then.